Walk into the silence of a Persian temple, deep within the Sasanian heartland. The air is thick, heavy with the scent of burning juniper and something else, something metallic and old. Candle smoke curls like ghosts around pillars carved with the triumphs of kings. Your eyes adjust to the gloom, and you see it, a life-sized figure, pinned to the wall like an obscene specimen. It wears an imperial purple robe, grotesquely perfect, and a scepter is clutched in its hand. The face stares out, but the eyes are gone, stitched shut with coarse thread. This is no artist's creation of wood or bronze. It's skin, Valerian's skin, meticulously flayed from the body, stuffed with straw, and dyed that angry Roman red so the shame would never fade. One flick of a knife, one failed negotiation, turned the most powerful man on earth into a rival king's most horrific wall hanging. This is the story of how the Roman Empire's proudest boast, Invictus, or unconquered, got laughed out of the room by a Persian king who knew how to make a point. To understand how an emperor ends up as upholstery, you have to picture Rome in the mid-3rd century. It wasn't the marble grandeur of Augustus, it was a dumpster fire. Historians call it the crisis of the 3rd century, a 50-year period where the empire nearly collapsed. Emperors were rising and falling so fast, they were little more than bad temp workers, often murdered by the very troops who had proclaimed them weeks earlier. Between 235 and 284 AD, at least 26 men claimed the title, a chaotic parade of generals who seized power only to lose it just as brutally. The economy was in freefall. Years of emperors debasing the currency to pay the ever larger armies meant that silver coins were now mostly bronze, with a light wash. You needed a cart full of near-worthless money just to buy a loaf of bread. And as Rome tore itself apart from the inside, its enemies pressed in from the outside. Barbarian tribes like the Goths and Alemanni crashed over the Rhine and Danube frontiers, raiding deep into lands that hadn't seen a foreign enemy for centuries. To make matters worse, a devastating plague, known as the Plague of Cyprian, swept through the empire, depopulating cities and crippling the legions. Into this burning world steps an unlikely figure, Publius Licinius Valerianus. Valerian was no young, ambitious general. He was a man in his 60s, a member of a noble and traditional senatorial family, the kind of man who probably ironed his toga and believed in the old ways. In 253 AD, after the latest emperor, Aemilian, was murdered by his own soldiers, the army turned to the respected old senator and handed him the crown. His to-do list was brutally simple: save everything. Valerian knew he couldn't do it alone. The empire was too vast, the crises too numerous. So he made a pragmatic choice. He cut the empire in half for administrative purposes. He would take the east, a land of ancient cities and immense wealth, now threatened by a new and aggressive Persian dynasty. His son, Gallienus, would rule the west, tasked with holding back the Germanic tides. Valerian marched east toward the true danger, the Sasanian Persian king, Shapur I. Shapur wasn't just a raider, he was an empire builder who saw himself as the heir to the great Persian kings of old. He had already smashed his way into Roman Syria, even sacking the megacity of Antioch. Rome desperately needed a hero, a restorer of its faded glory. Valerian, stern and gray, thought he was the man for the job. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. Valerian's legions, a force of some 70,000 men drawn from across the empire, slogged east through Anatolia. The year is 257 AD. Their boots crunch on salt flats under a blistering sun. For 2 years, it's a grueling campaign of stab and parry. Valerian's forces retake lost ground, fix crumbling forts, and hunt shadows. but they can't land a killer punch on Shapur's highly mobile armies. All the while, the Roman army was being hollowed out from within by the ongoing plague, which had followed them from their attempt to intercept Gothic invaders in Asia Minor. Then came the flashpoint. Edessa, a fortified city in what is now Şanlıurfa, Turkey, crouched on a dusty plateau. By 260 AD, the Roman army was cornered here. Shapur, a brilliant tactician, had outmaneuvered them. His fast-moving Persian cavalry had stripped the surrounding fields bare, cutting off Roman supply lines. Inside the walls of Edessa, the situation was catastrophic. Disease was rampant, morale was shattered, and starvation had begun to set in. The proud Roman legions were trapped. Parched and cornered, Valerian saw only one way out. He waved a white flag, hoping to negotiate a truce and buy his army safe passage with a massive payment of gold. Shapur invited the emperor to his camp to discuss the terms in person. What happened next is a matter of historical debate. Roman sources, eager to excuse the defeat, claim it was a treacherous trap, that Shapur violated the peace parley and seized the emperor. Persian accounts, however, simply state that a great battle was fought, and Shapur captured Valerian with our own hands. Shapur's own inscriptions boast of the capture of Valerian, his Praetorian prefect, and other high-ranking officials. Either way, the result was the same. In a storm of flashing swords and chaos, the Roman Emperor Valerian, now nearing 70, his armor dented, his eyes wide with shock, was taken down. For the first and last time in its long history, a reigning Roman emperor was hauled away in chains, a prisoner of war. The scene changes. Imagine Shapur I, the King of Kings, seated tall on his magnificent warhorse. Sunlight glints off his golden necklace and ornate crown. Below him, the Roman emperor kneels. The imperial purple is gone. Valerian is in the plain mail of a common soldier, his wrists bound. The Persian soldiers bang their spears on their shields, the cheers as sharp as breaking glass. This was more than a victory. It was a cosmic reordering, an unparalleled propaganda coup for the Sasanians. The real show, however, may have happened backstage, during the long years of Valerian's captivity. According to some Roman accounts, the humiliation was a daily ritual. The Christian writer Lactantius, writing a generation later, claims that Shapur used the former emperor as a human step stool, forcing Valerian to his hands and knees and planting a royal sandal between his shoulder blades every single time he mounted his horse. Day after day, year after year, the man who once held the fate of the known world in his hands became a piece of furniture. He lived, according to one historian, in ignominious slavery, while other Roman prisoners of war were put to work as skilled laborers and engineers, building cities like Bishapur and dams that still stand today. Their emperor was subjected to a singular, soul-crushing degradation. But did it really happen that way? The most lurid tales of Valerian's fate come from a single, highly biased source: Lactantius. Lactantius was a Christian writer who penned a book called On the Deaths of the Persecutors, a work designed to show how the enemies of the church always met a fittingly gruesome end. And Valerian was on his list. The emperor had launched his own persecution of Christians in 257 AD, ordering clergy to sacrifice to the Roman gods or face exile. For Lactantius, Valerian's capture was divine payback, and he described a horrific end. After years of humiliation, Valerian was flayed alive, his skin dyed scarlet, stuffed with straw, and hung like a hunting trophy in a Persian temple as a warning to future Roman ambassadors. Another popular tale, a common trope for defeated tyrants, claims that Shapur had molten gold poured down Valerian's throat. Yet, the Persians' own version of the story, carved in stone, is far cleaner. At sites like Bishapur and Naqsh-e Rostam, magnificent rock reliefs commemorate Shapur's victory. There, the Sasanian king is shown tall and majestic on his horse, while Valerian kneels before him, wrists politely tied, or is held firmly by the hand in a gesture of submission. The scene is one of total dominance, but it lacks the visceral horror of Lactantius's account. Most modern scholars believe Lactantius was indulging in horror movie propaganda. It's more likely that Valerian, an old man by ancient standards, eventually died of disease or old age in captivity. But whether his end came from a flayer's knife or simple illness is almost beside the point. Symbol or corpse, the message was the same. Rome, the eternal, the unconquered, could be unzipped and draped like a cape. News of the disaster at Edessa reached Rome at the speed of rumor, sending shock waves of instability across the empire. Valerian's son, Gallienus, was now the sole emperor, left to manage an empire that was actively disintegrating. He was in an impossible position. He sent envoys, offered gold for his father's return, and received only silence. With the Eastern legions shattered, he had no army to spare for a rescue mission. He was too busy fighting off usurpers, like Postumus, who established a breakaway Gallic empire in the west, and Macrianus, who used the captured Roman treasury in the east to declare his own sons emperors. For a time, the Roman Empire fractured into three competing states. Gallienus tried to project an image of control, stamping coins with the motto Restitutor Orbis, restorer of the world. But everyone could see the cracks. The east slid further from Roman hands. Shapur I, his frontier polished with a new kind of terror, now ruled unchallenged. The story of Valerian's capture became the ultimate cautionary tale, nightmare fuel for every Roman child. A century later, Christian leaders like Constantine the Great would spin it for their own purposes. See what happens when you persecute the saints? A national humiliation was transformed into a divine sermon. The sermon became a legend, and legend, as it so often does, sticks like dried blood. How Valerian actually died, whether from old age in a comfortable exile, a dagger in the dark, or a flayer's knife, nobody truly knows. Perhaps his hide never saw the inside of a temple. Maybe it became dust on a remote Persian hillside. What lasts is not the fact, but the idea. An emperor of Rome, the living embodiment of divine power on earth, reduced to decor. His capture marked the first and only time a Roman emperor was taken prisoner, a psychological blow from which the empire's prestige never fully recovered. Every time later, Romans glanced east toward their powerful Sasanian rivals, they would remember that even the sacred purple could be peeled away. And somewhere in the cliffs at Bishapur and Naqsh-e Rostam, the stone reliefs remain. They show Shapur, forever tall in the saddle, and Valerian, forever bent in defeat. Mute, enduring proof that empires can fall loudest, not in the fire of a burning city, but in the chilling whisper of a story about flayed skin. Valerian's fate was a warning carved in stone. What do you think? Was he truly flayed alive, or was it just propaganda? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story of Rome's darkest humiliation, hit like and subscribe for more forgotten histories.